Yeah, it's about as bad as it sounds, but maybe not for the reason that you're thinking of. Before we get into how any of this works, I need to explain why the ninja is such a victim of this game's messy damage type system. So if we go into the codex here and tab over to the Zeds, we can see that each Zed has weaknesses and strengths, which on paper is good information, but if you just go by what these entries tell you, you're not getting the full story. We can see that the Scrake here has a weakness to ballistic, cut, and biological. But as any ninja will tell you, if they've ever tried to kill one of these things on Wave 2 during Hell on Earth, it sure doesn't feel like they're weak to cut, so what gives? Well, what you actually need to look at is this page here, where it tells us that cut damage is effective against flesh, neutral to mire, and ineffective against both armor and Zed-Tech. So now let's go back to the Scrake. When it says he's weak to ballistic and cut, what it's talking about is this exposed flesh here on his shoulders and the top of his head. But as you can see, on his chest, his arms, and his face, all of that is covered with armor, or Zed-Tech. It's not really made clear what the difference between the two is, or where exactly they cover on each Zed. You don't get to take advantage of that juicy weakness to cut until the armor is gone and the flesh beneath is exposed. But the problem is that since cut is so weak against armor, it takes an extremely long time to break that armor using cut damage. This is the same reason why the Vulcan can still kill this in 3 hits despite the Scrake allegedly being resistant to force damage. It's telling us that force damage doesn't do as well against his flesh, but if you strip away all his armor with a single shot, suddenly that's a lot less of a factor, and the superior fire damage of the Vulcan can begin eating away at his flesh. This is also why you would never want to use hollow point rounds on a gun. Unless you have some way to remove the armor before you start shooting, simply mag dumping into a flesh pound with a scar, for example, outfitted with hollow points, will take many, many magazines of concentrated headshots to take down. When you're deciding what damage type to mod your weapons with, the only thing you should be considering are bosses and large Zeds. All of the strengths and weaknesses of these small and medium Zeds are irrelevant. They're trash Zeds. They'll die to anything. It's only when the health pools become too large to ignore that you need to be careful with what you bring. That is the reason why force damage is the best damage type in the game. It has no bad matchups. It deals with flesh pounds and Scrakes. It strips the armor from the Impaler and the Chimera, and despite the Queen Crawler being allegedly resistant to it, even though I'm fairly certain she counts as flesh, which is a neutral matchup, it's still good against her because weapons with force damage tend to be explosive, which are very handy, not just for dealing with all of the landmines she spits out in Phase 1, but also for dealing with all the hordes of mini-crawlers she spawns in Phase 2. So all of that to say, when you pick Ninja, you're already at a disadvantage, because the primary damage type that you can scale in your skill tree and weapon mods is one of, if not the worst damage type in the entire game. And that is precisely why I have created this build designed around ranged cut damage. There's going to be a lot of overlap between this and basically any other ninja build. The primary difference will be in the weapon choice, which I'll get to in a minute, but there's a few things I want to go over here. First, at level 8, between Kaishakunin and Roaring Tiger, this is entirely a personal preference pick. Technically, more headshot damage is better, at least assuming that it's still a multiplier like it was in previous games, but having access to 20% more damage even without hitting headshots can help shore up your time to kill if you aren't landing all of your pellets directly on the head. Personally, I just hate the sights of the gun that I'm building around in this case, and the shakiness combined with all of the visual noise in the game just makes it really difficult to keep your gun pointed at their head while you're ADSing at close range. I find it a lot easier to just hip fire, so that's why I'm picking this, but you can try out both and just pick whichever one feels better for you. While I would love to have Demon Stance, because a big source of chip damage that you take in this game is from husks and bloat bile, 50% more ammo is absolutely non-negotiable on Hell on Earth, as long as you're using a gun with ammo. Then we take Red Shadow, because our gadget is the primary way that we will open up our takedowns on large Zeds, so having that damage reduction can be a huge help if there's more than one large Zed nearby, or if you just grapple into a Flesh Pound who decides to do his rage animation when you arrive. Ninja mains, you know what I'm talking about. The decision between Kyuketsuki and Ebb and Flow is a lot less close than you think. As a bit of a spoiler for the gun that I'm using, my original plan was to leverage the flechette round attachment with Kyuketsuki, because they're the only source of ranged bleed affliction in the game outside of the ninja's perk weapons, which means that you can use this to heal over time even while kiting and shooting things from a distance. I thought that sounded pretty cool, but in practice there's a couple drawbacks. Number one, these effects don't kick in until you damage something that's already bleeding, not when you inflict the bleed. Which means that you need to shoot something 1 or 2 times just to inflict the bleed, and only then can you start shooting it again to benefit from the damage and healing. That means if you one-shot a trash Zed, you don't heal off of it. Versus large Zeds, since you don't get the damage until they're already bleeding, your first few shots are not benefiting from this 25% increase to damage, which is a non-trivial DPS loss. The final nail in the coffin, though, is that the healing from this is, at best, 1 hit point per second, which is the exact same rate of healing that you get from Ebb and Flow, which is the skill that I prefer to use. It has a higher damage boost that's always active, and the healing is an upfront burst rather than being doled out over 10 seconds. It shows him using katanas to get the healing, but you can still get the healing just from doing a gun bash. At level 30, we're taking Leopard Fist, as it's the only thing that's relevant to what we're doing from among these three. I have no idea if the vulnerability that it's speaking about here is any different from just an increase to your own damage. I have to assume that it's its own kind of multiplier at the end of the damage calculation, which would be nice, but again, I don't know for sure. But it increases our ranged cut damage, which is the only thing I care about. Alright, finally, we can talk about the gun that we're using. I'll just briefly mention that even though the Bone Breaker is really bad without the engineer's skill at level 20 to double its pellet count and therefore double its damage, it's still superior to the Contact, which is the only other gun with flechette rounds available, because despite having lower damage, it's still enough to one-shot trash Zeds, and the superior DPS helps with large Zed takedowns. However, there is a version of this build where instead of going the Bone Breaker route, you throw all these mods onto the Contech instead, which lets you buy it sooner and save money so that you can work toward another weapon as your primary strategy, while the Contech remains a kind of support weapon for clearing trash. For me, though, I'm building around the Bone Breaker as our primary damage source. These mods do not have exactly optimal tier 3 bonuses, but as you can see, I'm kind of running low on BioSteel here, so for now this will be good enough. Normally I prefer the lightweight mags over extended mags for most weapons, but on this weapon in particular, I actually like the drum mag because it lets us hit the single magazine large Z takedown breakpoint, which is very nice. As for everything else, accuracy and recoil bonuses help us do hip-fire headshots, and the suppressor, as always, is mandatory whenever available for extending your Z time. Despite the fact that we're not using the bleed skill at 26, I still want flechette rounds because we're scaling cut damage primarily, and although I don't know for sure if this is the case, I suspect that diluting the damage type with another damage type, like ballistic for example, will also dilute the amount of damage we're scaling, which is why we're not doing this with, say, a Scar with hollow point rounds. Again, I don't know for sure if that's the case, though, because there's nothing in this game that allows us to test these things or see damage numbers to know for certain. One other thing I want to talk about, though, is in regards to these Tier 3 bonus abilities, particularly the inclusion of Panic and Stumble. I'm going to be making a lot of assumptions once again, namely that the incapacitation system works similarly to the way it worked in previous games. So if I'm wrong about that, then what I'm about to talk about is probably not going to be as relevant. What I'm referring to here is stacking incaps. So if you remember back to the damage type codex entries, Every damage type has afflictions associated with them that they build up naturally in very small amounts. Most of the ammo types in the game also have certain multipliers for afflictions that allow you to have access to these afflictions sooner. But the important part here is that all of the quote-unquote physical damage types have the ability to inflict the stumble in cap. The more stumble power you have, the quicker you stumble the Z. Simple enough. You can see that one of our tier 3 bonuses is the Stumblesome bonus ability, which just adds 20 stumble power. However, we also have 2 panic attack tier 3 abilities. You see, ordinarily, if stumble is the only in-cap that your gun can inflict, you want as much stumble as you can get. Stacking more is always better in that case. But if you have both stumble and panic, things get complicated. You see, having the panic in-cap on a gun that doesn't already have it is great. Panic is a much longer stun than stumble is. However, assuming this game works like previous games did, and from what I've seen in this particular case it does, different in-caps can cancel and overwrite other in-caps, and each in-cap has its own individual cooldown, rather than there being a global cooldown on all in-caps per Z. This means that if you inflict panic and then immediately inflict stumble afterwards, the panic ends early and they enter stumble instead, which is a much shorter stun. What we want to have happen then is for stumble to trigger first and then panic. So, we just need more stumble than we have panic, right? Yes, but not too much, because if we have too much stumble, it can re-trigger the stumble in-cap during the panic in-cap once the cooldown from the first stumble has ended. This is also the reason why we take, what is it called? Saki Jutsu over Chikairi, even though we aren't using a melee weapon and have no intention to parry. If we take the bonus stumble affliction from this skill, it can cut our panic in-cap short. So in this very niche case, it's actually literally better to take nothing at all than to have bonus stumble power. So the ideal setup then would be to have some amount of panic, and then just a little bit more stumble than that, so that when you shoot a Z, what happens first is they stumble, and then they panic, and then after the panic ends, they get stumbled again. This is exactly what we have achieved with these tier 3 bonus abilities. The Stumblesome bonus gives us 20 stumble, and then each of the 2 panic attack bonuses give us 10 panic, which puts them at equal affliction, except that the gun itself deals a very small amount of stumble by default, letting us achieve the optimal in-cap loop. This gives us a very large window for takedowns, assuming we aren't getting harassed by trash or swarmed by multiple large Zeds at once. So that's the gist of the build. If you've ever tried to play Melee Ninja and find that parrying things in multiplayer is an absolute gamble that feels horrible, maybe give this build a try. It's definitely weaker, but it's also a lot less reliant on having a stable connection for all the perfect parry skills, and it also doesn't involve the Vulcan. Oh, and one more thing before we move on to the gameplay. I'll just give some quick thoughts about the Ninja skill tree. 99% of the problems with Ninja would be solved by the melee feeling less clunky and the game having functioning netcode so that parries can work in multiplayer, as most of the parry skills in this tree are perfectly serviceable and even quite good in some cases. I'd love to have opinions on Devil Circuit and Violent Sorcerer, but during my brief time testing them back in the beta, I honestly couldn't tell the difference they were making, and the numbers haven't changed since then. I gave them a couple of tries now, and maybe it's just because I haven't upgraded them again, but whatever the difference they're making is, I can't feel it. Again, please, for the love of God, put some kind of area in this stronghold where we can see damage numbers and test them against dummy Zeds. I cannot believe they thought it worthwhile to put a target range in here and not have that be the place where you can actually test and see whether or not your skills are making a difference and how big of a difference they are making. There's so much information that should be here in game and it just isn't. Like the codex, for example. Wow, great. We know what damage types do to different Z types, but what exactly are these Z types referring to? I assume this guy is flesh, but is that armor there on his chest? How about the husk? Is all of this armor? Or is this Z tech? Same with the flesh pound. Is this supposed to be armor, or is it Z tech? Are these zones accurate to where they appear to be? Like if I shoot his shoulder, it'll be flesh, but the arms and the chest are armor? Where exactly are these boundaries? If the armor is destroyed, I assume that it's flesh underneath, but I don't know for sure. How about these mire guys? I assume their entire bodies are mire. That seems intuitive enough, I guess. But apparently this queen crawler is mire, despite looking nothing like those mire guys, and her weakness is allegedly fire, which implies that she's flesh, since flesh is weak to fire, and mire is resistant to fire. But then why is she here in the large mire entities? Like, what is even happening here? It's such a goddamn mess. Oh, and the lack of information extends to the armory as well. What does handling govern exactly? I assume it's weapon swap speed and the speed that you ADS, but I don't know for sure because nowhere in this game does it explain what it does. Is there a difference between something like panic power and panic affliction? On the incendiary shells it says affliction, but as a tier 3 bonus it says panic power. What are the different things that you can roll in each tier 3 bonus ability pool? We know at least that different detachments have different pools of tier 3 bonuses that they can pull from, but hiding that information from the player is absolutely psychotic, as I know for a fact that there are people who will play this game and waste precious crafting resources trying to roll for a tier 3 bonus ability that they saw one time on an attachment that can't roll it. And I promise you, nothing feels worse than feeling like you had time stolen from you. The fact that this itemization model is RNG at all was a mistake from the get-go, in my opinion. My suspicion is that Tripwire is going to have to learn this lesson the hard way, the same way Fat Shark did with Darktide. Anybody here played Darktide when that was released? Do you remember the absolutely dice roll-laden crafting system and how awful that was? Remember how long it took them to fix it? Over a year. It took them over a year to finally put it in a good place where everything was deterministic and the grind was purposeful. And that's even when overhauling the crafting system was something that Fat Shark advertised before the game even released. They planned for the crafting overhaul to be a priority, and it still took them that long. Looking at KF3's roadmap, I don't see crafting overhaul anywhere on it. And as a result, I don't even know if they think any of this is bad. And that's all before we get to the disaster that is the material grind. I'm not going to go in depth on how bad the material crafting economy is. I'll just let my current stash of crafting materials speak for itself. Here's a hint, it's not about Ztech or Icar. Oh, do you hear that? That's the sound of gameplay that I've been putting off until now. I suppose I better get to that, huh? I don't know if I made it clear in my previous videos, but the reason you want to spend all of your operational budget is because you don't get to take any of this with you. Use it or lose it. So I've got a kunai here that takes up all but 5 of my operational budget. That's about as close as I could get it. Alternatively, if you wanted to like start with some green armor instead, you just drop 500 from this. But the reason I want all of this in the primary is because that all of that value is basically money towards my next weapon when I sell this. And if your weapon is very expensive, that can be very important to get it like a wave earlier than you would normally. But yeah, if it's not as expensive and you don't necessarily need that, then starting with green armor can be a help so that you can get to your blue armor breakpoint faster. Hey, anybody remember this map? Yeah, this is a map that exists in this game. What was that jump? It can't be this easy, surely. Okay, goodbye. This place is working, I tell you. Oh, what do you mean I grabbed him with that? Who needs crosshairs? Anybody left? Oh, I guess not. Oh, just so you know, that grapple hook, it's hit scan for when you actually activate it. Where'd that Gorefast go? Okay. But yeah, your grappling hook is not a projectile that travels. Its hit detection is hit scan. So if your cursor is over them when you activate it, it will connect. That's why you saw it kind of travel and meet that husk as it landed. Again, you see I'm like waving my mouse back and forth. That's to hit things with the hitbox that lasts forever. It's basically how you avoid as much damage in melee as possible. Got him. Something is breaking below me, I can hear it. Another way to cancel out the really strong aspects of Gorefasts, which is their lunge attacks, is just line of sight them. If they have to come to you in melee, it's a lot easier to avoid taking damage from them. But running away from them in the open is where they're at their most dangerous. And it looks like I'll have an opportunity to demonstrate that with this next wave. Ordinarily, this is where I would go for the Bone Breaker, but since it's the Horde, I don't want to buy something that's likely to run out of ammo. So I think instead I'm just gonna double armor and call it good. But yeah, I've heard some comments that people take a lot of damage using the kunai, and that can happen a lot, just taking a lot of chip damage from clots and cysts and gorefasts. Really, the thing that you need to be aware of is that Gorefasts are basically the most dangerous Zed in this entire game. But the way that you deal with them is by being aggressive to them. They're at their most dangerous when they're chasing you at a distance. But if you go to them, you can interrupt them before they get their attack off and basically neutralize them as a threat. And of course, you can again like line of sight them, like just go around a corner and then wait for them to come to you. Because if you try to, like, if there's a Gorefast at the end of this hall, and you're, like, running away from him, he will catch up and he will hit you. But you can, like, approach him and interrupt them, and that's how you kind of deal with them. If there's a lot of them, it'll get messy, which you'll probably see a lot of during this wave. Oh, and you want to talk about map balance? Think about Radar Station and all of the double turret coverage that offers, and then there's this guy. Look at the absolute square inches that this covers. Oh, and to be clear, even though I'm not a melee build, if you get Zed time as Ninja, just light attack spam. Like, if melee were less clunky, and parrying was, like, functional in multiplayer, Ninja would be one of, if not the best, like, perks in the game. He would be very strong. Like, just for that Z time alone, the amount of DPS you can output, particularly against bosses. Do I want to interrupt that? Yeah, probably. I'd really rather not be in this hallway, thanks. They're kind of just killing each other. You know what? I am going to go in here. Because I knew Zed time was coming. So, this Scrake is dead. Is there another Scrake in this mess? Yes, there is. I see just the outline. I can't see anything else. The absolute visual noise. Granted, my Caltrop was contributing to that, but man, it's hard to see in this game. Do I even care about tools that much on this map? Probably not, right? Alright, well, in any case, it's Bonebreaker time. And I upgrade this to purple, probably. Yeah, that sounds about right. Actually... Oh, never mind, it spent my money filling multi-tools. It's not what I wanted it to do, but it just did that when I opened up the shop anyway. I would have preferred to... Oh, I wouldn't have been able to afford it anyway. I was going to grab an ammo bag, because holy cow, does this weapon have ammo problems. The damage is so bad, like, because and fair enough to them, they weren't necessarily intending to balance perk weapons around perks that are not their, like, the one that you use the weapon on. And obviously that's showcased in, like, the fact that the Vulcan is good on everybody, and, like, some perks have weapons that are made obsolete by weapons on other perks. Like, they didn't balance this to be used outside of Imran, or the Engineer, because the Engineer has a skill at level 20 that doubles this weapon's damage, and is basically mandatory in order for it to work. So the fact that I'm using it on Ninja is, well, you're gonna see. It takes the better part of an entire magazine to take down a large Zed, and as you can see from our ammo pool, we have maybe 10 magazines. So if every large Zed takes up an entire magazine, and we only have like 10 magazines, that doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for all the small Zeds. I'd like everybody to gather up, please. Thank you. Nope, not even. I'm fairly certain some of those weren't headshots, though. I know for a fact that it can kill them in less than one magazine, even without the execute. But man, do you need to be hitting your headshots. Oh, and this will be a good example. Just to show you what it's like to try and ADS this and why I don't take Roaring Tiger. Just tell me where his head is right now. So the flesh pounds do actually go down faster than the Scrake. Probably should have saved my last Caltrop, but it's fine. Do we have Leopard Fist? I don't know if we need it quite yet. I've also had that zipline glitch me through the map before. Need to get some distance. I was afraid this would happen. Need to spend this Zed time killing trash rather than killing Zeds. I can't even tell if that hit me. The range of that chainsaw is way longer than the actual model. Let's probably play it safe. Okay, game. I wanted to grapple to the Flesh Pound. You know I wanted to grapple to the Flesh Pound, so why didn't I grapple to the Flesh Pound? You can send your response to my email. Alright, kill secured. That was the important part. Could kill the rest of these things with a knife, honestly. The important part is just that I have Bone Breaker ammo for all the larges, because that's kind of my only out at the moment.
While you're at it, get a syringe, maybe?
Yeah, this is awkward. I kind of need to just, spend all my money recovering, which sucks. I'd really like to have a kunai as well as backup, but, I kinda can't for now. This may end up coming down to the knife. I'd really like to get a demonstration of a clean takedown. Even if I die, even if I lose, if I can get like a demonstration of that, I think it'll be worth it. Just so that there's like the proof of concept for this shit. Because these kind of wacky, not very good off-meta builds are the kind of builds that I enjoy playing the most. Not just because if any balance changes, they're likely to get better. And I don't feel like a build that I've been using has been nerfed. Let's go down here. But also because I just love experimenting. Five, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, I was gonna count, but the circumstances have changed. I'm greeting! This is gonna suck. I knew one of those was gonna hit me. Quite dangerous, this map. Again, I'd love to spend Z time killing things, but the Bone Breaker does not kill fast enough for that. Oh good, he suicided and stole my grapple. If you grapple a suiciding husk, that can just kill you, because he will hold your grapple until he dies. Once again, game, please grapple what I point at. Really would have liked to save that armor for the boss wave, but circumstances require. That was clean enough. I mean, clearly could have been better, but with the in caps that you can stack just so you can mag dump into the head, it does kill him in less than one magazine. That's about as good as you can hope for range damage. Or for cut damage, I should say. There aren't enough Zeds for this to cut me off, are there? Surely not. Surely I won't be punished by directing all of my attention in this direction. I'm good. Lots of long hallways for husks to do that. There's still a flesh pound, huh? I don't know how that hit me. I don't know if I have enough health for this Scrake anymore. I may even need to use my ammo as well, which sucks. But we'll see. I'll take it. That wasn't clean, but I'll take it. Okay. Well, honestly, I'm considering grabbing a healing grenade MP6. But that doesn't leave me a lot of money for everything else. How much is it for ammo? Jeez! 1,000 ammo to not have enough for the wave. Well, I mean, let's see how much I have after refilling these, first of all. Yikes. 200 bucks for ammo? Yeah, I can't afford that. This is probably going to be a kunai then. Yeah, just a default kunai. Grab those. This game is hard when you play as, like, when you role play as the platonic ideal of the tripwire consumer. This game is hard. I've not a lot of interest in equipping the Vulcan and just doing Vulcan things on every perk. Even though it's really funny. Every perk has at least some way to scale its damage.
Back to the mission.
Yes, even the ninja. It's probably a mistake to feel safe here. Alright, things are already getting exciting, so I want to try and group things up. It's not really who I was going for, game. Ziplines are broken. There's not really any doors left on the map for me to get some breathing room in. It's also probably very dangerous to go down here, but... There we go. When you're point blank, it's actually quite easy. The problem is getting point blank and having the time to do anything. Well, that's awkward. I missed that bash. I don't know if I agree with that hit game. I think maybe we need to discuss that. I have several counterpoints. I don't know what that flesh pound's doing still alive. Grapple into rage animation, the classic. We love it. I don't really like being on the bottom floor. Those fireballs homing is absolute bullshit. Well, I mean, I won't turn it down. Default kunai on a not melee build kills faster than this Bonebreaker in Z time. This is probably greedy. Honestly, I was expecting to hit the Scrake. Really prefer not to run out of ammo, but we don't necessarily have a say in the matter. "31 Zeds is still enough for things to spawn behind me, yeah. Can't get too comfortable down here. I would have liked to go further, but the fact that there's a flesh pound there makes this very awkward. I don't know where you were going. Alright, basically no ammo left, but I'll take it. I do have an ammo crate up top. I would have preferred to save that for the boss wave, but... beggars can't be choosers. Is anyone following me? Okay, yeah. That was the longest range suicide. Sorry, my bad, man. I didn't know you were in there. This is incredibly greedy, but I'm going for it. Yeah, and there was a siren there. That sucks. The siren after execution true combo. I'd like to get a Z time now, please. Alright. Okay. I don't really know about this one. Okay, he's upset now. Maybe we can... There we go. That was pretty clean. I'm also noticing I haven't been getting a lot of panic in caps during this match. Maybe the ratio is a little bit off. Maybe I need a tiny bit more stumble. But we made it anyway. Boss wave. What would suck here? I mean... Impaler's the easiest, obviously. Queen Crawler would be not great. Really, it's just Chimera. If I get Chimera, that's basically... If I get Chimera, it's time to pull out the kunai and just pray for a Z time.
Fully loaded? If not, hot awaits.
Is it worth it to just then grab this? Fill up on ammo, and then just in case, all reliable slash me cracks open a chest with the golden spatula in it. If it's a Chimera, I will feel absolutely no shame in doing this to him during Z time. But if it's anybody else, I will roleplay as the platonic ideal of the tripwire consumer and shoot at them with a bone breaker. Alright, let's find out.
Enough shopping. Pod's closed.
Alrighty. I hear her below me. There she be. Okay, that was kind of cool. That's like not bad damage, as you can see. Ah, okay, almost ran into that. I'd like to maybe delay the Z time until... Alright. Awkward timing for Z time, but I'm not going to say no to headshots. Okay, momentum carried me into that, I'm not just dumb. To be honest, I thought there were more attacks incoming. Ow. Ran the wrong way, my bad. I can be smarter about this. I'm not taking advantage of the damage windows. It's a bad idea to stand there, I should think. Did I take damage there? I wasn't paying attention. I think I remember where I dropped that syringe bag. But I think first, I need to grab that. Well, she's basically dead. And there you go. Definitely not as good as the melee firebug, but I think this cross perk has some potential. Yeah, and 800,000, that's on the low end, I would say. So, it's not like crazy or anything, but yeah, I would say it's good.